Welcome to Urban Legends, and in tonight's video, we'll dare to summon the spirit whispered about in every childhood sleepover. Will you be brave enough to watch until the mirror cracks? This is the disturbing legend of Bloody Mary. To begin the Bloody Mary ritual, you choose a bathroom or a room with a mirror that stands at face height, and you close the door. You turn the lights off completely, leaving the room in darkness, and you either hold a single candle or let the dark surround you. If you use a candle, you light it and keep it low, so the flame casts an uneven glow across your face but leaves the rest of the room hidden. You step up to the mirror, standing close enough to see yourself clearly, but not so close that your breath fogs the glass. You keep your eyes fixed on your reflection, and you do not look away. When you are steady, you begin to speak her name. You say Bloody Mary 13 times in an even voice, letting each word hang in the air before you say it again. When the last word leaves your mouth, you fall silent. The room is completely still except for the sound of your own breathing, and the candle, if you hold it, flickers softly. At first, nothing changes, but if you keep watching, your reflection begins to shift. The features you know blur at the edges, and then another outline forms behind the glass. A face appears over yours. It's pale and gaunt, with hollowed eyes that burn dark in the candlelight. Her skin looks drained, stretched tight across her bones, and her mouth hangs slightly open, the lips torn and stained as though she has come from some terrible place. Her stare is unbroken, and her eyes are locked onto you with a coldness that never wavers. As you keep staring, she grows clearer, her presence sharpening until she seems to stand just on the other side of the mirror. Slowly, her hand begins to rise. You see it in the glass, white fingers extending toward you, reaching forward as though pressing against the surface, stretching to push through. And then, from the mirror itself, a terrifying scream erupts. It's sharp and piercing, raw with fury, and it's so sudden that it shakes the air around you. The cry feels too loud for the small room, and she is about to break through the glass to get you. The earliest accounts of people summoning Bloody Mary can be traced back to the United States in the middle of the 20th century. Folklorists who began recording playground tales and children's superstitions in the 1960s and 1970s found that the story was already well known by that time, which suggests it had been circulating by word of mouth for at least a decade earlier. It did not appear first in books, newspapers, or any kind of official writing. Instead, it lived in the spoken world of children, whispered and repeated from one group to the next until it became a common ritual in households across the country. This timing places the birth of the legend within a period when post-war America was experiencing a surge in the study and collection of folklore. Children were the perfect carriers of these kinds of tales. They moved easily between schools, neighborhoods, and families, and they repeated stories with just enough variation to make each retelling feel personal and authentic. Bloody Mary fit neatly into this pattern. She was frightening enough to spark imagination, but the ritual could be performed in ordinary places without the need for special tools or dangerous stunts, which allowed it to spread quickly among young people. Some people believe the figure we call Bloody Mary is connected to Mary Tudor, the first queen to rule England in her own right. She came to the throne in 1553 and spent her brief reign fighting to restore Catholicism, a mission that led to the execution of nearly 300 Protestants. The burnings earned her the nickname Bloody Mary from her enemies, and her legacy became soaked in fear and violence. For centuries afterward, her image was painted as that of a merciless ruler, and when children later began chanting her name in darkened rooms, it was easy to imagine her vengeful spirit stepping through the glass. Others argue that the legend may be tied to Mary Queen of Scots, a monarch whose life was overshadowed by political intrigue and betrayal. She was imprisoned for almost 20 years before being condemned to die by her cousin, Elizabeth I of England. The execution itself was gruesome. The first blow of the axe failed to sever her head completely, and the scene became infamous for its horror. A queen robbed of her freedom and dignity in such a violent way left behind an aura of tragedy, and many storytellers have wondered whether the ritual of summoning Bloody Mary echoes the restless spirit of a woman wronged by fate and family. Then there is the story of Elizabeth Bathory, the Hungarian noblewoman accused of being one of history's most prolific killers. Folklore claims she tortured and murdered hundreds of young women in her castle, and that she bathed in their blood in the belief that it would preserve her youth and beauty. Although historians debate the truth of these accusations, her legend has taken on a life of its own, and the idea of a woman consumed by vanity and cruelty fits neatly into the terrifying image of Bloody Mary staring back from a mirror. Even though she was not named Mary, her blood-soaked myth became entwined with the ritual. Another candidate often mentioned is Mary Worth, a figure rooted in American folklore rather than European history. Depending on the version, she was said to be a witch who practiced dark magic and was eventually executed, or she was a woman who lived near a crossroads and lured runaway slaves, only to betray them for a reward. In some retellings, she kidnapped young women and used them for experiments in the occult. No matter which version you hear, the story always ends with her spirit refusing to rest, her name becoming a curse. It is easy to see how her tale would have merged with the mirror ritual that people dared each other to perform, her reputation evolving into the modern version of Bloody Mary. When people stare into a mirror for too long, something strange begins to happen. The human brain isn't designed to lock onto one image without interruption, so after a few moments it starts to fade and distort what you see. This is a well-documented effect known as Troxler's fading. Your eyes shift slightly, the light plays tricks, and your brain begins to fill in what it thinks should be there. The result is that your own reflection may not look like you anymore. Your skin tone can darken, your eyes can appear hollow, and your features can take on a warped and unfamiliar shape. In a dimly lit room, when you are already tense and expecting something nasty to happen, those distortions can easily be mistaken for another face staring back. What feels like the spirit of Bloody Mary may simply be the mind misfiring under stress. For most of history, people did not have psychological terms to explain these experiences. Instead, they turned to older beliefs. Mirrors were never seen as ordinary objects. They were mysterious and often feared. Many cultures believed a mirror could hold the soul, or that it could act as a doorway for spirits to pass through. This is why families covered mirrors in a house where someone had just died, because they feared that the spirit of the deceased might become trapped inside the glass. People also used mirrors as tools for divination, for trying to catch a glimpse of what lay ahead. One of the most common rituals was performed by young women who wanted to know who they would marry. They would light a candle, look into a mirror at night, and wait for a shadowy face to appear behind their shoulder. Sometimes they claimed to see the image of their future husband, but other times the reflection showed a skull, which was said to mean they would die before marriage. These rituals often carried the same blend of hope and dread that we now associate with Bloody Mary. When people chant her name today, they may think they are taking part in a playground game, but in reality they are acting out the remnants of much older traditions. What was once a ritual to reveal the future has been transformed into a ritual to summon fear. The science of Troxler's fading explains why faces in the mirror change, but the reason we interpret those changes as something supernatural comes from centuries of stories about mirrors as magical objects. Bloody Mary lives at the intersection of those two worlds, half optical illusion and half inherited folklore. Over the years, the figure of Bloody Mary has spread far beyond the whispered dares of children in darkened rooms, becoming one of the most recognizable figures in modern folklore and horror. Her presence can be felt in films that twist her tale into fresh nightmares, in television shows that borrow her image to unsettle audiences, in novels and short stories that reimagine her as both villain and victim, and even in video games where players come face to face with her as a digital specter. Despite the countless variations, what unites them all is the fascination with her name, her mirror, and the ritual that has endured across generations. A simple act of summoning that still unsettles those bold enough to try it. The legend has moved from the shadows of folklore into the spotlight of popular culture, yet it retains the same raw power it always had, the ability to spark dread from nothing more than reflection, repetition, and imagination. In the end, whether she is seen as a restless spirit, a distorted reflection of history, or simply a story passed down to frighten the curious, Bloody Mary endures because we keep telling her tale. Her power has never been about proof of her existence, but about the fear and fascination she awakens whenever her story is spoken aloud, and it is that lingering unease that ensures that her place in the dark world of legends will never fade.